This is Robert FitzPatrick. Of all the presentations I have prepared for consumers on multi-level marketing, MLM, I consider this one the most important. If you are in an MLM or are being enrolled or want to know what MLM is all about, I believe this presentation will be the most important information for you to escape or avoid its entrapment and to help others escape or avoid it. MLM's primary method of deception is disguise. This presentation removes the disguises to reveal MLM's actual identity. What is uncovered is grotesque and disturbing. Some people will not face it. MLM is a coercive cult and a destructive pyramid scheme. From my experience, as long as MLM is allowed to wear its masks of business, income opportunity, and direct selling, it maintains power to deceive and protection from law enforcement and media exposure. This presentation focuses on MLM's cult identity. However, to see the cult, MLM itself must be fully identified, and the pyramid scheme within it must also be understood. Then, how it gains control over people's lives and inflicts its personal and financial damage become clear. So our first two slides I call the face of the MLM cult. That is the countenance, what you see, what people recognize when they begin to see something is wrong here with multi-level marketing. And this is most often recognized, of course, not by the person in the cult, but by friends, family, associates, and so on. And the most terrible aspect of this face of the cult is that people in it are led to commit financial suicide. That is, they will ruin themselves financially over years of time, buying things they can't afford, ruining their credit, running up debt for the household, and so on. And these are the aspects. These are the things that are identifiers. That when you see that a person who has not joined, but has been lured into the cult, something is really strange going on here. Their voices will change, their personalities will change, the way they dress, and so on. So these are merely a description of what many, many people have written to me, called me, and asked me, what in the world is going on here? So continuing, looking into the face of the multi-level marketing cult. This is what people see among people who've been lured into it. And they recognize it as strange behavior, but very few can understand what is behind this behavior. Of course, they will see people obsessively reading, quoting, and referring to multi-level marketing. They'll, of course, be experiencing the pressure, the constant recruiting that the person now is doing all the time, trying to bring others into the multi-level marketing company. To the extent that they will abandon their family, their friends. But the worst aspect of this part here of the description is that whereas I said people will commit economic suicide, they will also attempt to assassinate others' character. That is, when people do not join, do not support them, or dare to criticize what they're doing, they will turn on them, as all cult people do, for reasons that we will get into later. But they will reject so vehemently your own questions or critique that they will attempt to attack you, vilify you, ruin your character, gossip about you, and so on. Literally assassinate the character of people that they were close to, even their own family members. So to begin, first, part one, we need to identify exactly what multi-level marketing is. It's not difficult to identify it. It is clearly recognizable. It is an entity, a type of enterprise. They are distinct, recognizable, and that's what we're going to do first, is to identify and describe what is actually called multi-level marketing. So in the process of identifying what is multi-level marketing, what is not multi-level marketing, the first fact to know is that multi-level marketing is everywhere. There are hundreds and hundreds of such companies, and millions of people have been involved or are involved in them right now. Approximately 1 out of 20 households at any given time in the USA, or really in the whole world, are involved in a multi-level marketing company. They're estimated to be as many as 1,000 of them operating at any given time. And the other thing to know is that most of the people who've been in multi-level marketing are no longer in them because they quit. They lose and they quit. So each of these schemes has a minimum 50% of the people come and go each year. The more famous ones that people identify as multi-level marketing or are identified in the media or self-identify as multi-level marketing include Amway, Herbalife, Nu Skin, Nexium, which was shut down as a sex cult and the leader is in prison now, Advocare, which was also prosecuted by the Federal Trade Commission and ceased operations, Lioness, which is mostly in Europe, ACN is the company Donald Trump was primarily identified with as a promoter and endorser, Utility Warehouse, which is mostly in the UK, Mary Kay, which is everywhere, Avon, which is everywhere, and Avon used to be not multi-level marketing, but traditional direct selling, but around 2005 transitioned into becoming a pyramid recruiting scheme. Some of these companies that I've named claim not to be multi-level marketing as multi-level marketing is described in this presentation. So while we know multi-level marketing by some of the companies that are in the public domain or in the media, there are thousands that many people have never heard of. So it's important not just to know MLM by the names of the enterprises, but by their characteristics. And that's what we're going to spend a few slides on, is just seeing the unique characteristics of multi-level marketing. And that is, they are characteristics that are not seen in other companies in general, but they do have some that are shared with all other companies. For example, all multi-level marketing companies function as licensed corporations or companies. So they have licenses to do business. And that is their more or less their disguise, that they are actually businesses. They have products. Almost all of them sell some kind of a product. And the people that do the selling of the product or are authorized to do the selling are not employees, but are independent contractors. And the payments that people receive are called commissions. They are actually portions of the payments others have made for the products that the company is identified with. You have to pay to get into a multi-level marketing company. You pay some kind of a fee to join, and you normally have to keep paying or maintain some level of purchasing or other kind of commercial activity in order to stay in the plan where you are entitled to receive these promised rewards. And the other opportunity that, the other aspect rather, that is unique to multi-level marketing, which I don't think many of us have ever heard in a regular job, where the company offers you what they call an opportunity of a lifetime, income without limits, beyond your imagination. Very few of us have jobs where the company would make such promises. In multi-level marketing, it is routine, it's universal. And then finally, the most obvious aspect of it, but many people also don't recognize this for what it is. The company is described in utopian terms because it is based on an income that is derived from an unlimited or infinite expansion. And we'll get into that soon. The expansion involves recruiting, and usually on an exponential basis. That is, each person recruits 2, and then the 2 have to recruit 4, and so on, or 5, 25, 125, etc. And you are told everyone can do it. There's no limit on this capacity. Anyone can do it. So as noted, the foundation for multi-level marketing's reward plan is a form of recruiting with no limit. It's based on exponential expansion. 5 get 25, 25 get 125, and so on. Why do people not see the impossibility of this? Well, it's a blind spot for sure for most of us, how exponential expansion works. So here's a little quiz to see if you yourself understand how exponential expansion operates, how it works. So here's the question of the quiz. Which would you take if offered $1 million in cash right now in your hand, or a penny put in your hand now that will double each day for just 30 days? So the first day, a penny is put in your hand. The next day, day 2, you have 2 pennies, and day 3, you have 4, and so on, only for 30 days. So which would you take? Go to the next slide to see. Okay, so if you chose to take $1 million in your hand up front, you did well, except if you had chosen the penny, you would have gotten $4 million more. Actually, more than $4 million. And there's the numbers in black and white on the right-hand side of the column. 1 penny becomes $5.3 million in just 30 days if it just doubles every day for 30 days. So the growth is explosive. But there's a few things to notice about how this works. The big numbers are at the bottom. You have to get quite a few levels before you start hitting the big numbers. It didn't become even $100,000 until 25 days. But after that, the numbers really start piling up. If those were people instead of pennies, that 5 million would actually be 500 million. So in 30 days, one person recruiting 2 people who do the same for just 30 cycles would produce almost over, actually, 500 million people. And you can see where it would go from there. 500 million to 1 billion, 2 billion, 4, 8, you're past the population of the earth now. So what do you learn? The lessons. The growth can be explosive. However, the big numbers are at the bottom, meaning the vast majority of people in an exponentially expanding chain are at the bottom. For those at the top, only a tiny number are at the top. They're going to be getting money if the money flows from the bottom to the top, and the vast majority are going to be at the bottom where they don't have a downline or not very much of a downline. They will get virtually nothing. Now, drilling down a little more deeply into how to identify multi-level marketing and distinguish it from real businesses, let's take the first 3 unique characteristics of a multi-level marketing operation. The first identified here is that it puts no limit whatsoever on the size of the market or the number of existing salespeople or contractors. There is a denial of the reality of saturation. If you could imagine McDonald's placing new stores on every corner without regard to the other stores already in operation or the total number of customers. But that is how multi-level marketing operates. It's authorized. The contractors are incentivized to keep recruiting more contractors regardless of the market size or the number of existing contractors. It's called a sales company. It's called direct selling. But uniquely, in multi-level marketing companies, there is actually no viable retail income opportunity. It's not really possible to make a profit consistently from actually selling the product in the open market by yourself on your own from your home. The margin on the product is too small. The cost of finding customers and keeping them and supplying them and serving them is far too high to make this viable. So the only market that exists is really among the contractors themselves, who purchase products monthly in order to remain qualified. And then there is the actual sales formula or the commission structure. Uniquely in multi-level marketing, 50 to 80% of all these sales commissions on all the sales by all the salespeople end up in the hands of the top 1% on the sales recruiting chain. Now, is this because that 1% made 50 to 80% of the sales? No, they made almost no sales on their own. It's all coming from the people below them. So it is an extreme money transfer. The rewards become greater in volume, and the percentage awarded to the top people increase the more people you recruit. The higher you are on the chain, the more people you have below you, but also the greater the percentage of the total commission paid on the transaction that you receive. An extreme top-loaded recruiting reward system. Multi-level marketing companies are generally characterized as companies, businesses, operating within the market according to market-based and economic principles. But in fact, when you examine multi-level marketing more closely, you see it actually employs anti-economic traits, such as the first one, an endless chain. It is the only business on earth in which saturation and market limits are not recognized, and so it uses the endless chain. But a characteristic, as we saw in the example of exponential expansion, puts the vast majority of the total number of people involved at or near the bottom. And at that position, profit is impossible. So at any time, at all times, the great majority of people involved are in an unprofitable position. Recruiting a large downline is required to gain the promised rewards, but only a tiny percentage of people at the very top could ever fulfill those top positions, and therefore the model dooms everyone else. Then you add in costs. There are costs involved to participate all the time, month after month, either through purchases, trainings, tools that you must purchase, or simply losses that you incur from other actual real business activities or work you could have been involved in. So there are opportunity costs. Finally is the question of selling. It's described as direct selling, but in fact, there is no retail sales opportunity. Profitable retail selling is actually impossible, and no one does it. In 20 years that I have worked in this field, I have never met a person who actually earned a sustainable profit from simply retailing multi-level marketing products. the sales don't go to the customers. The sales are not made primarily to people in the open market. Incredibly, the sales are to the people who are on the chain. That is, the salespeople sell to themselves. And the pay that they receive for selling to each other is this extreme top-loaded plan which transfers the money to this tiny few rather than rewarding the people that actually make the sale each time. Now, with these 5 characteristics by the design, by the requirements of recruiting, by the lack of a retail or external sales opportunity, and then a pay plan that sends all the money to the very top, what would be the expected result? Well, of course, it is loss. Loss on a massive, almost incalculable scale. More than 99% make no profit each year, but if you add in the churn rate and calculate it over a longer time frame, then you would see that the percentage of people who have ever made a profit by any means in multi-level marketing is a virtual zero. So as we've said, multi-level marketing's great disguise is that it is a business, that it is operating within the market. And therefore, when people lose, they are told, well, too bad to be you because, well, the market doesn't guarantee anything to anyone and there is risk. How hard did you work? Did you do enough? It's considered a function of the marketplace. It was fair and it was a business and you lost. Well, too bad. Maybe you shouldn't have tried. Maybe you're not suited for this and so on. You blame yourself. But what if it isn't a business? How would you know? Well, there are 2 characteristics that define a business. Multi-level marketing fails both of them. The first is a business has a voluntary contract. That's the great thing about business. People enter into transactions voluntarily, and they have enough information to enter the contract, to enter into the transaction. They do it willingly because they have enough information. But in multi-level marketing, you don't get enough. You don't know how the pay plan works. You don't know about the loss rates. You don't know about the costs. You don't understand exponential expansion, which would guarantee you're going to lose from the start. So it fails on the first element of a business, that is a voluntary contract, because it has not disclosed enough information for you to have entered into this contract voluntarily. The second is a business is a proposition or a transaction with a reasonably equitable exchange. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can be overcharged. You can get an inferior product, but you can't get nothing. You can't be sold something that doesn't exist. You can't be sold something that the seller doesn't even have to sell. But that's exactly what multi-level marketing offers. They offer an income. It's presented as the greatest income opportunity in the world, as an unlimited income opportunity, and one that everybody, anybody, can participate in and succeed at. But it's not true, as we've just explained. Only by design can but a tiny few actually succeed. And their success depends on the losses of all the others. So there must be deception in order to get them into this losing proposition. So not only is there not a voluntary contract, there doesn't result in a reasonably equitable exchange of value either. The promised reward is of income, and that is what multi-level marketing promises, is not and cannot be delivered. Well, okay, you might be saying, I get it. Multi-level marketing is a bad deal. It's not even a deal at all. It's not a business. It's a pyramid scheme. I get that. But a cult? Why call it a cult? And how could even a bad business be a cult? Well, that's what we're going to look at. In the next few slides, we're going to see that multi-level marketing has to be a cult. It couldn't function without coercive control. People don't voluntarily join losing propositions and stay in them, or recruit their friends and family into them, even as they themselves are losing money. That's the behavior of a cult person or an addicted person. That's what we're going to look at in the following slides. Well, cults and cultism, for many people, is perhaps an area they don't know much about, or whatever they do know seems rather mysterious. The professionals, the academics that have studied cults, and they have been studied for many decades now, are in general agreement on the characteristics that all cults exhibit. All of these characteristics have to do with controlling people's thinking. That's what a cult really does. It's a form of mental enslavement. So the first thing all cults do is control the information you get. You'll be urged or warned not to listen or read or think of other areas or other experts. So you become completely immersed in the language and the teachings of the cult only. The doctrines and the tenets, the beliefs are presented not as ideas, not as rational thought, but as ultimate truths, the answer to life's questions. Since they are ultimate answers and everything is presented in a controlled way, the world becomes black and white. There's no gray area. There's no nuance. There's no room for discussion. You're in or you're out. You're a believer or a non-believer. And to enforce all this, every cult will create its own language, that is, its own special cliches, aphorisms, slogans that people will repeat over and over again. And all of those slogans are designed to terminate or subvert, short-circuit, critical thinking, where questions might arise. These cliches are designed to shut down questions. And another area that is common of all cults is that they are not just focused on a narrow area of life, but virtually all life experience. So the cult leaders and the cult itself is presented as so authoritative, so exceptional, so enlightened, that it can effectively advise about any area of life. And so whatever occurs in your life, they have the ability to interpret in their terms. And so cults are often called totalistic or all-inclusive. There's no area of life that is separate from it. There's no escape from it. It covers every element of your life. And continuing with Professor Lifton's defining characteristics of cults, returning to that last one just referenced about experiences being reinterpreted. So contrary experiences have to be reinterpreted to fit the ideology. And therefore, if you see people suffering or losing, that has to be explained away, because it would perhaps cause you to question the ideology or the beliefs or the claims and promises of the cult. The leaders often do this by, in effect, beating you down, getting people to admit to faults or sins, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, failures that they have had in life. And these become then ways in which the person can be dominated or manipulated. So if the cult tells you that you can become wealthy and you have admitted that you have financial troubles, then the fact that you have financial troubles will be used against you to disqualify you from asking a question. Well, what do you know? You're not wealthy. You failed. You don't have money. So who are you to be questioning this? And then finally, the group has to be, in effect, vaccinated against anyone outside the cult who might question it. So every member is encouraged, urged, or even threatened to beware of people who would question or criticize the cult. Anybody outside the cult who dares to question it has to be considered bad, uncredible. And if you are in relationship with that person, you will be advised to avoid and stay away from that person or group. So at the beginning of this presentation, we looked into the face of the MLM cult. And we identified characteristics or behavior that millions of people have seen with their own eyes among multi-level marketing victims. They've seen the changes come over them. They've seen the relentless recruiting. They've seen them reject their own families and friends and exploit family and friends. And yet, most people don't suspect multi-level marketing of being a cult. Why? Well, there are some obviously good reasons why people are put off by this and don't immediately go to the cult explanation. First, most of us see or think of cults as small, marginal, and exotic. They wear funny clothes. They have beliefs that are ridiculous or extreme. But multi-level marketing is huge, global. It's not marginal. It's not anomalous. It's part of the business world. And its leaders are in high positions in the Chamber of Commerce or maybe in Congress. The people that are in multi-level marketing and the people who might recruit us into a multi-level marketing look like us. They don't wear special costumes or styles. They don't use words or terms that are unfamiliar to us. Their beliefs sound quite familiar. The rhetoric, the themes, the goals are not strange or unusual to us. And then finally, multi-level marketing is supported and endorsed by some very credible, seemingly credible people of great popularity or respect, including politicians, celebrities, even clergy, sports stars. That these people are paid to endorse multi-level marketing is generally not realized or known. But most important, in my experience, is that people don't go to the cult identity, even though the people they see are acting like cult members. But they don't because they are told multi-level marketing is a business. And a business cannot be a spiritual, utopian, or belief-based operation, right? Business is practical, it's routine, it's governed by economics, math, profit and loss. That's the opposite of utopian, spiritual, esoteric ideas associated with cults, right? Except MLM is not a business. As we've seen before, in MLM, there is no voluntary contract. There's no disclosure or insufficient disclosure, and there is pervasive, deliberate deception. And it does not produce an exchange of value. Virtually everyone loses. Business is just MLM's disguise. MLM is not based on economics. It doesn't recognize economic factors like saturation or retail profit requirements. It's not based on the market. It creates its own artificial market among its own members. It's an internal money exchange. In place of economics, multi-level marketing claims to function on occultic or metaphysical concepts such as infinity, the endless chain, the unlimited opportunity, defying market limits and the laws of math and physics. It does this with a special factor true of all cults, not business, not economics, which would expose a cult. It does it on the basis of belief, unquestioned belief. The object of multi-level marketing is to capture the mind. The money follows. The primary dogma of the MLM belief system is that belief shapes reality. It requires this dogma in order to continue expanding while 99% of the people lose. It must do a lot more than just divert attention away from the money scheme or the fraud. MLM literally must reshape reality and get people to reinterpret their own experience, which will be negative. MLM claims the power of knowledge higher than logic, greater than economics, and beyond question. Those that believe succeed. Doubters, critical thinkers, negative thinkers, they fail. This explains everything, and this is what will keep losers staying in the scheme, hoping that if they just work harder and have greater faith, they will become winners. In MLM, belief is what cult authority Robert Lifton calls sacred science. He said all cults claim to possess some form of sacred science. The belief dogma in MLM, that belief determines reality, is not something MLM invented. It has a long history in American culture. And that's why it feels so familiar. It was in Transcendentalism in the early 1800s and in New Thought. It was part of Christian Science. It's the primary tenet of sales psychology. Fake it till you make it. Confidence conquers everything. And it is now part of mainstream Christianity called prosperity theology. Those who think positively will incur and receive God's graces in the form of money. And so, armed with cultic authority and making a utopian promise, MLM schemers can exert coercive cultic controls over huge numbers of people, all carried out in the disguise of a business opportunity. In this disguise, they can instill leader worship, impose thought control. All thoughts must now be positive. They can establish the winner-loser dichotomy. The winners believe, the losers doubt. And they can exert personal control over virtually every area of life, demeaning and discrediting apostates, doubters, and critics, because only losers quit and only quitters lose. Continuing with the power of this belief, the power to shape reality, multi-level marketing is able to demonize the world outside itself. The new recruit is now told that any other life choice, a regular job, a profession, the civil service, owning a small business, or climbing the corporate ladder, they're worthless. They're for losers. They're nothing compared to what multi-level marketing offers. Anybody that would choose those over multi-level marketing is a loser. They're able to exert a control, an intrusive control over all other parts of life, way beyond business areas, right into family, child rearing, personal attitudes, your religious faith, your attitude toward your country, sexual preferences, how you dress, and who you vote for. Multi-level marketing is famous for these cult-like mass spectacles in which extreme persuasion occur. They exert extraordinary political influence using the millions that they've gained from the victims. They finance seats in academics at universities, essentially putting PhDs on their payroll. And they even influence foreign policy as they are able to move into more and more countries. Of course, they have infected established religions now, too, with the prosperity gospel. And among the groups most affected, where multi-level marketing is quite rampant, is among evangelicals, in the Mormon church, and in most megachurches. So to question or challenge MLM, now armed with this cultic power, is currently treated as a form of bias, a form of negativity, anti-business, potentially illegal, being possibly defamatory. It's downright un-American. So we began by looking into the face of the MLM cult, and then we examined the way it operates using the pyramid scheme, the exponential expansion. We've separated it from real business and from direct selling, showing that it is uneconomic, requiring people to fail. And then we've examined its cultic power, which is belief. It's sacred science, getting people to believe that it doesn't really matter about economics or math or markets. It's all about belief. If you believe, you will succeed. And if you fail, it's because you didn't believe. And this has enormous power over people. But there is one more context to put multi-level marketing in order to understand it. And if it is not understood, if the context is not known, it still will have the power to enroll people and to baffle those that are not enrolled and confuse them so they can't help those who get enrolled. And that is to see it in the context of our capitalistic system, of our business system, which is what America operates on. It is us. So how has multi-level marketing abused and distorted our system? Multi-level marketing is able and has been able to enroll millions of us over many years in its disguise as a business, all the while causing 99% loss rates. Imagine how many people have lost money in multi-level marketing. They have the experience of loss, failure in it. They were victims of it, and yet it remains unscathed. It continues to operate. It does so in this disguise of being part of us, part of our business culture. It reflects, but in an exaggerated and grossly distorted form, dominant values and beliefs we generally hold, most of us, in our capitalistic culture. Multi-level marketing constantly speaks about freedom and independence and initiative and self-reliance and self-employment. Who would be against that? Don't we all espouse and exalt that? It talks about radical individualism, self-determination. Who's against that? It does teach a form of amoral, irresponsible behavior. But isn't that what corporations are supposed to do? Don't they have a duty to maximize profits? So MLM is just helping each of us reflect the values of financial world, of financial survivors, to survive and to win. It speaks about success and equates success with wealth and achievement and tells us that really is what our self-respect should be based on. Well, don't we hear this also in the world of advertising and marketing? And finally, it speaks about our lives, our personal lives, about our family, about having time for our family. It portrays winners having wonderful vacations, lots of leisure time, travel. Who doesn't want that? Aren't we generally told that's what we should be working for? And it also promises consumer rewards, cars, big homes, furniture, appliances, boats. These are the consumer rewards, the proof of a successful life. Does any of that sound bizarre, strange, unfamiliar? Of course not. It's what dominates our culture and our general beliefs, if we haven't examined them, of our capitalistic culture. There are two sides to the context of MLM in our larger American capitalistic culture. The first we already looked at. Multi-level marketing mimics, though it distorts and exaggerates, very popular, commonly accepted values and beliefs. They are dominant values and beliefs in our system of capitalism, our culture in America. But there is also another reason that MLM is thriving currently in America and in much of the rest of the world too, and that is it reflects our failures, the failure of our American culture, our American economic system to provide for people. And we hear this commonly as the death of the American dream or the decline of the middle class. But it is true that disaffection and disappointment are increasing, and they are growing at a rate faster than MLM is being exposed. So while more and more people are learning that multi-level marketing is not an option, not an answer, In fact, it's a dangerous financial trap and a cult. Yet, many more people are being pulled toward it due to their loss of faith and success in the conventional economy. In fact, MLM's growth tracks with a rise of authoritarianism and nostalgia, that is, longing for the past. There is currently no alternatives offered for people. In fact, there's nothing apart from our current system that people can even imagine that might come to help them. And so multi-level marketing looks like a possibility. It's delusional promises, it's false economic claims, it's non-rational beliefs, also form a kind of hope, a false hope, but it is something to blunt some of the harsher economic realities of declining wages and rising prices and lack of savings and the higher cost of the basics such as home ownership or a college education or providing for a family. It blunts and gives some relief. It's not real relief, but it is emotional relief to some of the failures that people are facing in the economy and in the government. And the last, which is not really an element of the cult, but more a protection of the fraud. And that is that multi-level marketing enjoys political protection from the government. No investigation has been made of MLM in all these years. All the statistics on the losses, all the deceptions that are promoted have never been addressed in any kind of a comprehensive way by any regulatory agency. Multi-level marketing is allowed to sell financial propositions, in effect investment schemes, to millions of people without any requirements for making disclosures. So why is that? Well, it must be acknowledged that in some ways the spread of MLM, the spread of its false hope, the self-blame that it instills in people is very good for some politicians. It redirects people. It distracts people from looking at the government as a source of their problems. They turn and look at their own lives. They blame themselves. They don't think of any alternatives to our economic system or improvements or reforms. They take it all upon themselves. And if you're a politician, this is good because it leaves you without any sense of accountability. When you take it all together, you have to acknowledge that multi-level marketing is a symptom of what is occurring in the country in terms of reflecting the failures and the current, in many cases, sad realities of our capitalistic system. This presentation is not intended to be a comprehensive coverage of cults or the cult phenomenon. Instead, it is designed almost entirely to connect multi-level marketing with its true identity, which is a cult, not cult-like, not cultish, but a dangerous, predatory, destructive, coercive cult movement. When people recognize this, then the face that they see of multi-level marketing that were in the first two slides, the obsessive behavior, the character assassinations, the financial suicides, and all the other bizarre, seemingly bizarre behavior exhibited by people in multi-level marketing, the self-destructive behavior, becomes much clearer. It also should clarify for many people that multi-level marketing is not a business. It is not direct selling, and therefore taking a great deal of time to look at MLM products or pricing or some of the individual deceptions that it engages in never gets to the core and never really enables people to avoid multi-level marketing or deal with it effectively. In the end, people deal with multi-level marketing one-on-one. As was shown, multi-level marketing enjoys extreme political protection. This was gained years ago, primarily through bribery, through political influence buying, or what is called lobbying today. Now, many of the regulatory agencies are so corrupted by multi-level marketing, many of their executives and officials actually move from their government positions right into multi-level marketing and then back into government through the revolving door, that they are in a position now to protect multi-level marketing rather than the public. And so for most people, combating multi-level marketing is a one-on-one event. It's when it enters your family or among your friends or at your workplace or in your church where people really do have to contend with it. And I've been asked over the years, how in the world do we recover our son, our daughter, my spouse, my uncle? How do we deal with this? And of course, anyone who has been involved with any type of cult knows this is not an easy thing to do. And it is not any easier in this cult either. Yet, there are a few guidelines that I think are valid in dealing with this intrusive experience of multi-level marketing among friends and family. First is obviously not to damage relationship in some way if you can. That is, don't begin by condemning the scheme or criticizing the person involved or telling them they've been duped or they're stupid, but rather try to use facts and logic to expose and debunk the pyramid fraud. As many of these slides have shown, its uneconomics, its impossibility to make a living, the loss rates, and so on. Recognizing these facts may be rejected and denied in the same way that all cult people deny facts and criticisms. Instead, try to urge a fact-based assessment. Stay with facts. It's the only anchor, really, to engage with. Try to get the person to face certain basic facts, such as how much money have they actually been spending in total or each month? How much time have they given to it? And what real experience have they had? Good, bad, loss, sad? Recognizing this too may be avoided. Part of what the cult is designed to do is to reinterpret experience, as we showed. And so many people have reinterpreted their losses, their sadness, their conflicts within the scheme in a way of self-blame. It's good to tactfully try to address some of the disappointments and dashed expectations or unfulfilled hopes that you know the person may have gone through that probably made them vulnerable to MLM in the first place. So reconnecting them with those actual real-life experiences that all of us experience in some way enables people to remember. And whereas the cult has been tried to get them to rescue them from this or deliver them from it. So it's important to get back to these things, to face them. It's also good to try to direct people back toward remembering who they were So if going back to the disappointments is an attempt to reconnect to reality, not the utopian world of the MLM, but the real world reality, getting people to remember their earlier pre-cult life, their actual things they wanted, hopes that they held, things that they did, skills that they have. That is to regain the identity which MLM has been stealing from them or dashing. That is the point of a cult, is to take away your identity and transfer it to the cult. And therefore you no longer have you no longer have self-determination. You're at the mercy of what the cult tells you to do. And then also, and maybe this is the most important, to recall the enduring relationships that they have, to recall where real trust and love are. Multi-level marketing offers fake love, fake trust. They even call it love bombing, where this fake affection and support is offered. Only though, as long as you adhere to the rules and keep feeding money and labor and support to the cult. And finally, to try to reconnect the person with the talents and the experience and the interests that you know they have, which is really the basis of self-respect, not success, financial success, certainly not success in the cult, which is not going to happen. So these are, let's say, guidelines that I have found others have used and seem to work, recognizing that it is very difficult to get a person to look beyond the influence, the coercive influence that the cult has exerted upon them. Time is on the side of people trying to bring someone out of a cult. Multi-level marketing, for most people, the spell lasts less than a year before the costs and the losses and the realities begin to take their toll. For some people, it's much, much longer. But the point is, time is a positive factor, so patience is also very useful. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that these slides will enable more people to first avoid cults for themselves, the multi-level marketing cult, and secondly, to help those they know are caught up in them or being tempted to join one. Thank you.